IVM.
You know the thing with subcultures, right? It's that space that everyone likes to talk about. Everyone likes to have a point of view on it. I would say in every possible way, feel like they are part of it or have some connection to it because it just generally is a very cool space. But do we really know all that goes into a subculture? Why it is what it is? Why are people interested in it? Why does the music, culture, art, everything else that kind of comes out of even fashion, right? How does that really work as an entire ecosystem? Especially when a brand wants to get into it, especially when someone wants to work in that space. What are the different things that you can do? What are the different kinds of experiences that you can create? What are the different kinds of artists that you can work with? And that ecosystem about a decade or ago was I don't think it even existed to a large extent. It was very, very tiny. And many of us would go for these smaller gigs or experiences and we would be like, it was almost like something that you were thankful that you had some options. But that drastically changed over the last 10 years, right? A large part of it has gone mainstream, be it rap, be it hip hop. What was predominantly an underground culture has really become something that mainstream gets to enjoy, and that's spread beyond just the regular stuff. It's gone everything from regional to I can go on and on about it. But what is interesting is there are a set of companies that have come around the space who've turned around and said, I want to help create brand experiences or other experiences around subcultures, and primarily focus on making sure that things are kept authentic, that it's actually real, and it doesn't feel like a cop-out, right? It feels like something that is actually a part of what the space needs to be like. And one such company is 4x4. I've known Nikhil for a long time and I've met Himanshu recently, and I think what they kind of do is bring a level of balance to how we need to work with subcultures, and I thought that will be an interesting thing to talk about, and that's what we're going to do on this episode. I'm Varun Duggirala, co-founder and corner chief at The Glitch, and this is Advertising is Dead.
Hi, I'm Satyajit.
Hi, I'm Racheta.
We are from the Open Library Project and we host a podcast called Paperback.
Paperback is a podcast where we engage with stalwarts and experts from various industries, suggesting non-fiction titles that contributed to their journey in a big way.
We've had guests like Anjali Raina, Dr. Marcus Rani, Dr. Swati Lodha, Ambi Parmeswaran, Apurva Damani, and many more on our show Paperback. Find new episodes every Wednesday on IVM Podcast app, website, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Welcome back to Advertising is Dead with Nikhil and Himanshu. Guys, we were discussing before we started recording that should I call you all co-founders or directors like your LinkedIn thing does, but I think we'll stick to co-founders. That always sounds more fun. It's fun to have you guys on this because I think the word subculture is used so loosely. Mm-hmm. And what you guys do is primarily focus on the space that is called subculture. How would you guys define it? What is a subculture for uninitiated people?
For the uninitiated people, from a business perspective, subculture is the one that makes money, lesser money than mainstream culture. And I don't know, man, subculture, as you said, it's too loose right now. But for me, what subculture is something that has probably, you've discovered it and you've gone into it without the, mainstream media's attention and might on it.
Yeah.
Something that when you get attached or you feel for something personally and you try and grow it, and it's not a product that's been fed to you.
Yeah.
And then you try to cultivate it and make it your own. So that to me would be subculture.
Is that how you put it as well?
Yeah, I mean, it's not something that is easily marketable. There is not necessarily a very big market for it. But at the same time, most subcultures, if not all, come from passion. Mm-hmm. And it may not be the wisest thing to pursue as a career option, maybe not the most rewarding things as when it comes to money.
Yeah.
But it is definitely something that people are very passionate towards, be it hip-hop, be it graffitis, be it any of these newer forms of art that are coming out these days. And I feel that India is, in general, there are so many subcultures that are coming out with internet available to sort of break into the mainstream. So I think that's sort of, that comfort zone is sort of what we would put subcultures.
Yeah, because it gets, why I said the word gets misused a lot is that there are ways to work with what is called, so it was traditionally called underground culture. I was guessing, right? I mean, then it got confused by a lot of people, and then because it also because it was an easier time before, because at that time whatever was on public media would become mainstream and what was not would become underground, and somewhere over there existed subculture. If correct me if I'm wrong in that sense.
I mean, see, this is
I'm going full theoretical on this one, but
Yeah.
So I wouldn't exactly know, theoretically what you would call subculture per se or underground. But for me, they kind of represent the same thing. Subculture is a more marketable word.
Yeah.
Makes it feel more accessible. Probably pushes a little bit more people to feel like they belong.
Yeah. But it's a way to express yourself.
It's definitely like something that goes beyond logical interest or profit or ROI or कि इसमें नाम बना सकते हैं. It's like primarily anything that's driven by a personal passion and a personal need would definitely come under that ambit.
So when you guys started off, why was this a focus, right? And while Nikhil, I've known you for a long time, Himanshu, I've just kind of touched base recently, but why was this a specific area of focus? Also because there was a time, let's say a decade ago, when it was very clear that mainstream was everything, and there was this small periphery, which at that point was called indie, which is one of the again another really misused word. And then stuff was happening around it, and that kind of grew into its own. But it came to a point where what was indie then became somewhat mainstream, or rather got a lot of buzz from brands, everybody else. Why was this a focus?
We've always sort of been into the independent. Well, for me, it started with music. So my foundation is around independent music. And honestly, that is a decision that was a career decision taken for me, at least at a very early stage in my career when I was out of college. And I did mundane jobs for a year and figured that this is not going to be my life. And it has to be around something that I am passionate towards, because it's just not going to work otherwise. Luckily, it sort of worked out, because that was also the time, like you mentioned, where indie sort of started going mainstream. And we had a window seat. we I think lucked out, man. I think it was just being at the right time and the right place.
I mean, the core of 4x4 actually more than subcultures is this, that we've been driven by music. I mean, we both were in the music business, or with him at Bajao and Rolling Stone, with me at MTV and OML. And for me, it wasn't so much as a focus as like the most naturally obvious thing. I don't think so we ever sat down and decided that ये हमारा focus होना चाहिए.
Yeah, it was just a matter of करना है या नहीं, but it was never about
the idea
what it should be.
Which is always the best way to start things, right? If you overthink it, then it becomes a...
Yeah, I mean, we weren't like, कि हम...
There was there was no PPT you guys made between each other and said, ये bullet points से ये करेंगे.
Yeah,
it was just, it's like, it was a matter of whether we want to do it or not. The idea was simple. We want to do whatever we like to do and then take up production jobs to make up for the deficit.
That always seems to be the way things are at the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing is, we've been very pragmatic and real about it from day one. I mean, the idea was that, okay, music has driven us. And everything around that, and it was a certain kind of music that drove us. I'm not speaking genre-wise, but I'm literally speaking like, access-wise and the kind of different areas it came from and how it moved us. And then once it becomes about music, it also becomes about things that are slightly more bigger than that. Like, you start following a certain kind of lifestyle. The music listened to influences decisions and choices in what you wear, what you do, and like whom you hang out with, how you hang out with. So that's just become a kind of there are different offshoots to it that make it a lifestyle. And there are whole different aspects to it that move beyond music, like say art, or like, we say experiences, we say fashion. So anything that allows us to dwell in that space is something that we wanted to do, and we always wanted to do. And because kind of we live that life. So it is difficult for us to kind of come tomorrow and say ki, हाँ हमें.
So it's authentic in that sense, right? It's not coming from a place like, oh, I've heard this is a thing that everyone seems to be focusing on. Let's build something on that.
Yeah, it wasn't like ये इसका market
because
अच्छा
in this space you
है
can't fake it, right? I don't think anyone who
Yeah,
can
it's
do well
also
by
a little
faking it.
harder than it is for, say, like an FMCG brand. Of course, they would have their own challenges, but our product is not easy to sell. And apart from expertise, it takes a fair amount of passion and dedication that is derived from that passion to sort of, for it to cut. Because we would not be managing the artist we would manage if it was a out and out financial decision. Because if everything was about ROI, then most of the things we are doing, we would probably not be doing.
Yeah, including being in this space.
And you guys started off doing experiential and experiences primarily, and then moved on to managing artists and not just, and also from music really, and the fact that you said everything right from art, and when I say art, I mean let's say graffiti to like and fashion, everything else is actually a large part of this, and that whole spread has really happened for you guys. And one thing I find interesting about what you guys do is the fact that how when someone wants to create let's say a festival, an event in this, you guys kind of consult to say, guys, this is the balance. Because I think that's really the core understanding of the scene, right? If you're not balanced with it, then you're coming up with something that is generally like you'll get called out for just like.
Yeah, more than call out, it can also be like a bad business decision. And then we've been privileged and lucky enough to be on both sides of the fence, where we've kind of done things and also executed things and also invested into creating IPs and properties. We've seen people fail, we've seen people succeed. And somewhere at the back of the mind, we kind of keep it that it still needs to be about the music. And when people walk into this industry, and now that there is hype, money, valuation behind it, there's still no idea about how to do it exactly. So that's puts us in a position to actually tell people that, okay, this has worked, this hasn't worked. Based on our example, you as a client can expect this. These are the returns you can expect from brands. So it helps us take care of your P&L and design a space for you that works end to end. And that's pretty much come from us being in it at a time when it wasn't anything big, to seeing this phase where everybody went into it, to seeing things fail, seeing things work, and still being around.
Like I'd say from what 2005, 6 till even 5-6 years ago, or little longer. That was that period when it really went from like where are the venues? I still say where are the venues, but where are the venues? Where is stuff happening? Where can you even go to this? To the fact that will people even come to a festival with original music? I remember that. Some people won't even remember that was a thing.
Yeah, right? I mean, that's the time when it went from being like a thing that was cool between 5 people to a marketing tool to push to audiences. I mean, that was the real change, I feel, because we still don't have exactly what I call a healthy live culture. But what we do have right now is a healthy culture of brands and other entities trying to invest in this lifestyle.
Yeah, exactly. And that's also, I think that also answers your subculture versus underground question, because subcultures don't necessarily need to be underground. Subcultures can probably make money, and if done right, and which is happening, lots graffiti artists are getting commissioned for doing big scale 6-figure projects, and musicians are making 6 lakhs to 10 lakhs for performing in a show. But at the end of the day, if you look at a band like Local Train, that they would still fit into the subculture space, albeit not really underground anymore. So I think that is where 4x4 also is we've also sort of found our business model in that comfort zone. So it's not really underground anymore, which is why we've taken the punt and made this company. But it is still about subcultures. We are not really out there like doing big scale Bollywood shows, seeking big investments, bringing down international acts. I would rather send Indian acts abroad than bring international ones in. And that's the comfort zone. That's something that we've never really spoken of, but we always knew that this is where we want to be. We didn't even need to discuss what the direction needed to be.
And because it's like what, binds us together, and because why we are friends and we do what we do. And pretty much that's the bedrock of what this is based on. And not a cold calculated business decision.
Almost like what you guys are very clear in terms of the purpose of why you're doing this, right? I mean, and I think that in some way connects to the way something in this space primarily has to be executed. If you don't have that, and it becomes transaction related to more than it should be, which is why I said I use the word balance, right? That's core in this, in being authentic, and if for artists to kind of to work with you and want to be represented by you, I think that would be the core part, that you can get it.
Yeah, absolutely. I see with the artist management bit, as I said, it's slightly new in terms of a business model. And we are also keen on, we are learning day by day as we go with it.
Yeah.
And it came from a desire to basically work with people who are like-minded and see whether that makes business sense. Because, man, artists go through a lot, and we've always been friends with most of the artists, and we've always been scared that turning that friendship into a transactional business deal might affect what equation we had and why we loved being friends with artists in the first place. So those are decisions and facts that we kind of learn and walk the line every day. And it's easier to find the balance with people who get this space rather than people who we worked with or represented purely for transactional purposes.
Are you finding there was a period when there were no festivals for independent music, and then Weekender onwards, and that whole thing kind of spread out and stuff like that. And there was a point, I think, about a couple of years ago, when people started saying, are there too many festivals, or are they? Brands are interested, everyone's getting onto the bandwagon, but is that a problem you face now in terms of the market to really do? Or
not really, man. As promoters, there's no such thing as too many festivals. There's only two less ticket buyers.
That was a trick question, but anyway.
It's survival of the fittest, like any business.
Yeah.
Now it's business, and now then the money is rolling. Now only the better ones will survive, the weaker ones will fail.
Yeah. And it's also then it comes down to how the experience of it comes down to how you.
Then see, the more of it, then people start looking at narrower options. Then you just don't feel grateful for having a music festival. But then as a consumer, you start demanding.
There was a time
more.
you were grateful, right? I remember
we were just grateful for Weekend. Just the existence of Weekend, I was like, thank you. And now, even though you see that as a consumer, you move beyond that. You're like, okay, aur kya hai?
Yeah.
Then you go for the vibe. Then you go for I don't know, bar. Different things float different people's boats. But it's just bringing out more and more professionalism into the industry, more investment into it. Hopefully there is an upward curve, at least as far as what I consider the bedrock of the live industry, ticket buying goes. And we'll hopefully breach that. We'll find that tipping point, and I'm forever optimistic about it.
Yeah. What I also think is nice about the space now is, right, say, it's like someone like me who's kind of grown up, at least not grown up, came to Bombay, 2005, 6. At that point in time, you would go to the smallest spots you could find to experience anything. As many of us have kind of grown older, got married, have kids and stuff like that, we still get to go to this and still have the experience kind of grown with us, in the sense that I feel it's evolved in a way that it's I'm not saying the Raz scene was bad. I'm just saying that it's an evolved scene now. So what also then does is that the experiences that you would build out aren't necessarily just about what's playing on in the festival, but what really you can do there. What are the other things that kind of make you blend into it? Right?
How comfortable you are, as you said, you rightly pointed out. When we go to our music festivals with people whom we know, they're there's a certain, if you go with only music nerds, then there's a certain kind of space you want to go with. When I go with my wife, who's not that terribly interested in music and the live music scene as such, I look for different things, what's comfortable, what's vibe, what are the other things that might interest. Is there a nice literally theater art scene that can also be intriguing. So we grew up, we are a part of a generation, at least in India, that initially we're just thankful to have festivals. Now the same people, now we are catering to a generation that was born with choices or walked into 5 choices and decided to say, this is crap, this is good, this is crap, and pick and choose, and it just helps everybody improve their game. And it's great for brands too, so why not?
Yeah. The thing with brands is the fact that, brands have come onto the bandwagon, but also what ends up happening with that is then this whole merging many times. And I'm an agency, so I'm all for brands. But the fact is, when you have to balance the fact, okay, let's get a mainstream artist also into a festival that involves a lot of other artists. That programming also becomes tricky, right? Because sometimes that can go fully sideways into people are saying, no, 1 second, this is supposed to be a festival about a certain kind of a thing, then that goes away. When you're talking to a brand about how they need to balance that part, because a lot of brands also need to understand how to work with specific kinds of scenes. How do you think that conversation is best in terms of, if I'm a brand manager today, what do I need to keep in mind in terms of what do I need to listen to?
See, It also depends on the kind of brands, the brand you are and who you're targeting. Typically, at the end of the day, to be really blunt about it, brands are going to view festivals as their own marketing tool.
Yeah.
And it means it's going to be marketed to that certain section of audience. Does that section of audience expect authenticity? Does that section of audience expect just a great time, instant gratification, and you're trying to push that sale? Is it just fit to that one campaign idea? There are certain brands who and it's definitely justified investing in it as a short-term goal or as just for like instant gratification. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. But then there are also brands who want to invest in the culture of things because, and especially for them, I think it's very clear to know what you're trying to be.
Yeah.
If you're expecting to if you're looking at it as a plain business model ki ye mere festival sponsorship pe kya ROI mila, kitne log mile, they're not always in the race for the biggest, the most popular.
Yeah.
And by that default, like you really have no identity.
Yeah.
Or then you're in a race to be the biggest and like, the most famous, and that's always a losing proposition, or at least it's a money losing proposition if nothing else. Suppose you do want to go to a vibe, what I would recommend to any brand, like especially in the music spaces, it's easy to get trapped in what's hip today.
Yeah.
But that's the biggest trap into it. Like, look at what will be
Don't
hip
become
tomorrow.
Me Too, right? Just don't become
Yeah, like, look at what will be hip tomorrow, what will be hip day after tomorrow, like 2 years down the line, 3 years down the line. Start small, grow into size.
Yeah.
So that would be my
What's
biggest...
going to be hip tomorrow? What do you guys see really come? Like, because there obviously the hip hop scene has been the primary focus of everybody, right? Every brand, everybody wants to say, okay, let's, and that became a thing for the longest time, especially Gully Boy came out, made mainstream, did all of that.
हाँ, ये सब कुछ रैप है अभी.
सब कुछ रैप है, मतलब ये सबको बनाना है. That's been the
channel promo से लेके आचार का promo.
Everything, right?
Everything's a rap.
Don't even get into the Achar ka promo. I'm sure we'll find some 5 of those.
But I think that to answer your question, and it is today the industry is very data driven as well. So it's not just about there are two things. There are established properties like a Weekend or a Supersonic that have their own programming ethos, and then they will strictly go with data as to what works, what doesn't work. We know that if we bring down Marshmallow again, it's still gonna sell out.
Yeah.
Then there is that school of thought, and then there is another school of thought which is like your Breezer Vivid Shuffle or your the things that Red Bull does, where the brand knows that we are vested in this form of music or this form of art,
or this niche.
Be it b-boying or be it hip hop or any other genre for that matter. So like there are eclectic genres work with high-end whiskeys and so on and so forth. So then there is a brand image driven programming as well, which sort of works mainly in IPs that are curated for those brands or launched by the brands themselves versus data driven big scale programming that festivals do. So programming in general, I think, is very data driven or brand driven. What is going to be big tomorrow there is no real formula to it. Like we knew that in a year Gully Boy was going to come. So the whole industry was sort of, if you remember, prepping, everything was sort of like launched before, during or right after Gully Boy, all the big campaigns, other big things. So yes, that industry knowledge does exist, but there is no telling what is going to be the next big thing.
Because I've been in rooms as recent as 6-8 months ago so there is this, and I didn't realize this was a thing, right? There are people who go in as culture consultants and who talk about what is happening in terms of with because a lot of brands are trying to understand how do I deal with the millennial. Now they have to deal with this term called Gen Z. All this stuff is being thrown at them. They're also trying to figure out how do I market to them, what do they like, what do they and as part of that it becomes how do they consume stuff, like how do they. So I was in this thing and there was this guy who said that the youth today does not enjoy live experiences because they're always on the phone, and I said, are you kidding me? Because they're on their phone capturing those live experiences, right? And that is, and that's actually, I think, the problem. There is, and brands are open to education, that they want to learn stuff. The problem is that many times it's the wrong guy teaching them stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, it's easy to get, as I said, very easy to get caught up in it. Like,
Yeah.
okay, hip hop, that's my favorite example. Everybody got caught up in it, yeah. And fair enough. I think what it will do is like the future will be the fragmentations of the hip hop scene.
Like if I saw one more random like iteration of Apna Time Aayega trying to spin off into some social media post, I was like, khatam kar lo yaar.
No, but that hype will eventually die down, and what will remain is like, out of those different segments of hip hop,
Yeah.
what is it like, and what are the ones that still hold weight? What are the ones that will have a cultural impact?
Yeah.
Now everything, for example, everybody thought rap is gully rap, like gully rap is Bombay rap.
Yeah.
Now there have been hip hop scenes in this country, across the country, doing and getting the same amount of attention, even before like the gully rap explosion.
Yeah.
So maybe those will come up, and my future personally, if I would say, it's a melding of what is regional and what is contemporary, because that's the way it's gonna fracture.
Yeah.
And after that, I don't really know, because I think despite the everyone, as you said, lots of people do point out that everything's personal. Everybody wants phone, everybody wants small content, everybody wants hyper personalized content. But we will see a link back to the days of promoting community, because that's a natural cycle in everything that happens.
Yeah.
Like vinyls outsold CDs for the first time.
Yeah.
Not cause like lots of old people bought vinyls, because a lots of Gen Zs bought vinyls thinking, okay, that is cool.
I'm waiting for tapes to come back. That was my like.
No, but it is data that sort of governs all of this. At the end of the day, yes, big Bollywood, there has been a rock on, there has been a Gully Boy, but the numbers were there in hip hop before Gully Boy. The Gully Boy was made because the numbers existed and not the other way around.
True.
So if you
Because
look
there
at
were the
it,
stories of
there is always another genre that is waiting to explode. Like you look at the K-pop scene, there is a huge K-pop scene in India.
yeah.
And TikTok. I mean, like, who knew? Like, most of the youth is sitting on TikTok, and it's ridiculous. The numbers that are there on TikTok are ridiculous. You and I may not actually go and see the numbers, but they're there. So at the end of the day, that data exists. The numbers are there, and everything sort of follows. And yes, if there is a Bollywood movie on K-pop, it might just be the next big thing right away. Otherwise, it will take a few years to reach where it would have sort of reached maybe in a year with support of Bollywood. But at the end of the day, if the numbers are there and the data says that, yes, people are watching this, that honestly is where the next big thing is.
And that's why I said that I wouldn't blame the brands as much, right? Because the words I'm constantly hearing these days from brand managers are authenticity is a term they use a lot more. They want to make sure that they're being sensitive to how it needs to be in terms of how they're putting stories out and so on. And so. And these are terms which are traditionally never really used as much, right?
Yeah,
they want to make sure, because they know for a fact, and I think that's the beauty of the social media space, right, is the fact that your feedback is immediate. Like you are you're going to have your Kylie Jenner moment. Was it Kylie or was it Kendall Jenner moment? If you try to just appropriate it, and that's really where I feel that there's so many more aspects that haven't been really touched upon with subcultures. When music's one part of it, but there's so many more things. I mean, you guys manage a graffiti artist, right? And I think that, like, I know I can think 50,000 ways in which that I'm not even talking about like paint brands. I'm talking about all kinds of brands. And
absolutely.
And there's so many more things you can do. And finally, at some point, because anything that was art, when I say art, anything that was, let's say you painting something on something, etc., was always considered this extremely elitist thing that would only be for, let's say, hypothetically a wine brand, right? But this kind of is another aspect altogether, because it's not like Bombay doesn't have graffiti.
No, it does.
And so because when people go and say, oh, I went to Berlin and I came back and there's a lot of graffiti, I'm like, you can walk around Bombay too, you'll see all of that stuff.
Also, man, subcultures are cool right now because they have broken through. What I mean by broken through is that we were always in a society where being allowed to indulge in what I would say a subculture came with a certain territory. You had to be like upper middle class or upwards to be able to do that, experience that, be a part of that, simply because that's how you got access to it. And that's what's primarily changed. True. I mean, when you say music from the streets, earlier music from the streets was Bollywood because Bollywood is all that was filtered down to the streets.
Yeah.
Now it's the other way around. And that I believe is so empowering, and that'll show a rise in so many subcultures that we won't even know.
Yeah.
Like, Malum nahi hai, there might be like some scene bubbling up in one corner of Raipur,
Yeah.
and suddenly that whole state is up in it, and we are just sitting here completely ignorant of it.
Yeah, and it's a throwback to, like, I remember, and this might, when I give these examples, I kind of feel old sometimes. But the fact that I remember when Avial came out, as I said, I feel old when I see it. But that was, I mean, it's not like people need to know the language, right? And you mentioned regional.
I firmly believe in investing.
You don't necessarily need to whole world's heard Despacito for lack of a better example off the top of my head right now. Because today morning I was listening to something about how those guys actually the guys used to they sell their samples, the guys who came up with that, and they're proud of the fact that their samples are from the music they create are taken by other artists and stuff like that, which I think is interesting for a couple of guys who made that song.
Yes.
And that's really what I think it transcends. I think we forget that you don't necessarily need to know the language to really enjoy the music.
Yeah, the big way, and I think that's what he's saying. That's where the future is. Because we are a country, I mean, it's obvious, right? We are a country with so many languages. Yeah. And people are sort of now getting used to listening to non-traditional Bollywood music. And it's happening in tier 3 to tier 7 cities all the way through. So regional is where the future is. We really very, very strongly believe that the future is also in tier 3 onwards. Tier 1 and tier 2 are reaching their saturation points, and the real talent is going to come from these parts of the country.
Yeah.
And then it can be Tamil rap also, it can be Tamil rock also, it can be Tamil pop also.
Yeah.
But so it's mainly the language and not the genre. And that is where we believe that the future strongly lies, because a lot of the consuming market for most of these brands our population is sitting in those tier 3 to 7 cities. We have 7 tiers, which is by itself like
we've just started to scratch the surface over there.
Exactly. Like, so they always try to mimic what happens in tier 1 and 2, and that's where if original content is going to start coming out from, because people have access to technology, people have access to internet, buying patterns are changing.
Yeah.
So, but obviously I think if there are big brands who are to start putting down their money, they will want to start reaching out to these markets as well. So I think that gap will bridge, and eventually good music will come from these.
Especially in numbers, I feel like, you being an agency, like there's something maybe you would identify with, is that we've reached kind of a saturation, even in the numbers game, even in the whole accountability and the trackability of data, number of size, like views, listens. So even brands have realized that, because anybody can, like, that whole money can buy you space, anything space has transcended into the digital realm. And, the same accountability which we prided ourselves on like 10 years back has come back to bite us, because that's what they're trying to manipulate. So the biggest thing right now for everybody is that they want cultural influence as a new currency.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not views, maybe it's not just pure comments, but cultural influence. Like, how many people do you massively affect?
Yeah.
How many people like believe in something and that you live a lifestyle? So hip hop is a great example. Within hip hop, there's a bunch of like different examples of like, of people trying to follow a different cultural lifestyle. And that's why I think subcultures are back in vogue.
Yeah.
Because even from a marketing point of view, that cultural influence that everybody's tried to buy, and everybody's kind of plateaued out on it, because everybody's rocking 25 and 30 million views. But like, can you really make out a difference between who's what?
And it's also about what the longevity of that is, right? Like, I've given this example a couple of times, I think, on the show itself. Like, before, Gully Boy and all came out, Divine had just broken out, and we were working with Netflix, and we did that song, Kam Pachis, for him, right? The fact that he still plays it on his set list, for me, that is validation that it was made
an
right.
authentic product.
Yeah.
Like, it was something that made sense.
Like, because if it was just a branded thing, a lot of these guys will just do it once for the money and then move on. But the fact that he still plays it means he believed in the fact that there was actually something good that he was creating. And at some point, brands also are realizing that, like I said, some things will just be a flash in the pan and they'll go away. Some things will just stay longer. And to stay longer, then you're getting like so much more ROI in the long term.
And that's why the people push for authenticity, right? Because what's authentic stays longer.
Yeah.
It might not get you like, your huge bang for the buck. Like, I use for example, this whole Badshah and the world's most viewed song. Like, I'm sure there must have been a load of marketing effort put in.
Yeah.
But 3 years down the line, will you remember that song, or will you still remember, Badshah's first song that maybe didn't get so many views, but that introduced him and his style to the world?
Yeah.
And that's where authenticity comes into play.
Yeah.
And I still wish more brands jumped on that bandwagon. I still complain that there's not too many, because it's very, very difficult for a brand who's essentially selling a product to align itself with a cultural vision. I mean, very few are lucky and to actually be able to do that and pull it off correctly.
I know there are many more things on this that I really want to talk about, right? But I do know we need to go in for a break. So we're just going to take that and be right back with Advertising is Dead.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another awesome week on the IVM Podcast Network. If you are not following us on social media, please make sure you do. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Instagram was a big week for us this week. We crossed 10,000 followers. Also, you should check out the kind of stuff that we do over there. Get a look into the studio. And, see some of the quotes and stuff like that come out, and audiograms and, all that other kind of good stuff. So, let me tell you about 2 new shows that are coming up, right? So, the first one let me talk to you about is GayBCD. This show is hosted by Farhad and Sunetru. They share the ABCDs of their queer lives and dig into the memories and experiences. Tune in for a new episode every week on Tuesdays. Another show we're really excited to bring you is called Feeding 10 Billion. This show is hosted by Good Food Institute's Varun Deshpande and Ramya Ramamurthy. They talk to experts in the food industry about rethinking protein and reimagining food systems in India. New episodes out every Tuesday for this show as well. Also, Simplified's completing 150 episodes. My God, I can't believe that we're already there. They need your help to celebrate this milestone. Send us theories, concepts, or questions that you have using the hashtag Simplified150 on Twitter, or send us a DM on Instagram, and Chuck, Naren, and Shriketh will answer your questions on episode 150. On Cyrus Says, Cyrus is joined by Rajiv Lakshman of Raghu Rajiv from Roadies fame. He shares childhood stories of growing up with a twin brother, his memories of Cyrus at MTV, and his new show Skulls and Roses. The Ganatantra podcast is back from a hiatus with a warm-up episode. Sadhu and Alok discuss themes that you can look forward to in Season 2. On What a Playa, Akash, Mikhail and Siddharth talk about the Bangladesh-Zimbabwe Tri-Series, Monty Panesar as the next mayor of London, the physical requirements for playing chess, and a lot more. On Tech Careers in the News, Shiladitya is joined by Kaushik Vijay-Raghavan and Aditi Kulkarni to talk about intelligent automation and its impact on the real world. On Agla Station Adulthood, Ritasha and Ayushi dive into romantic relationships and the complexities that they entail. On Keeping It Queer, Farhad and Naveen talk to performance artist Swapnil Alize about accepting her identity, her love for dance, and her group Color Positive. On our Kannada podcast, Thalle Harate, Narahari KS joins Ganesh and Pawan to share an overview of public relations in India and how it is involved. And with that, let's get you on with your show.
Welcome back to Advertising is Dead. We're still with Nikhil and Himanshu. Now that the space has also expanded this way, right, and it's evolving the way it is, if you look at the kind of people who... And talking to someone who's like, let's say he or she is coming out of college and just thinking of, and I actually feel that a lot of people who kind of come into work, come with either extremely purist thought processes, because that's how we all are at that point in time. I wouldn't say naive, but we come with a pure thought process, right? I want to work with musicians. I want to work with stuff which I genuinely relate to as people. And then kind of get muddled into the space when they come and realize the reality of it. If you are someone who kind of wants to get into the space, what would you tell them? What do they need to keep in mind?
It's not glamorous. It's quite cool, but it's hard work. If you're doing it for the money, don't do it.
That's not true. No, there is money, but there is a lot of money involved, provided you're playing your cards right. It's just because you're dealing with music does not mean that you don't need to be a good businessman. At the end of the day, it's another industry, and it's another product. At the end of the day, you need to know how to sell it. And if you're good with your books, and if you're taking smart, calculated decisions, there is a lot of money. Sorry, but there is a fair amount of money.
Don't scare the kids away.
I'm not saying there is no money, but if you walk into it with the idea ki, I think I will be in the subculture business because there's shit tons of money to be made. I just think your reasons for being in it are wrong, and then what you might end up doing is not really subculture. If you're smart, yes, smartness
and if
is
you're
not
doing it for the right reason.
Yeah, I mean, you need to be smart despite it being driven by you. It needs the reason why you want to do it or be in it is because you love it and you believe in it and you cherish it.
Yeah.
You making money and you not losing it is a result of your smarts. And how much sense you have and what decisions you take.
Yeah.
Again, as I didn't mean to scare people, but I'm very I feel that
Don't come with come with a realistic perspective.
Come with a realistic perspective and do it because you love it. Like some part of it at least. Maybe you don't love the money making part. Maybe you won't love the talking with clients. Maybe you don't love talking with vendors to provide you a great experience. But do it because you love the music, you love the art, or you love the concept that you help people putting out or you're putting together. So there has to be that certain attachment to it.
Yeah.
And as I said, if you really, really wanted to make money, subculture, I mean, there are a bunch of things that you can do. Like, does a music business make you money? Ask any guy in the music business. They'll probably, only the big guys will say yes, the lower side will say no.
Yeah, in fact, that is the bigger problem, that most people actually end up coming to this industry with passion, but they lack a lot of business sense, and then they collapse.
Then they get frustrated at some point.
Yeah, they collapse. So it needs a lot of business sense. You need to be diligent. You need to know your Excel. You need to know your PPT, and you need to just be persistent.
Need to know your Excel is
the thing.
Yeah.
I mean, there is a certain, I probably say this now with a certain amount of maturity after going through it. There is a certain glamour associated to, oh my God, you're making a living doing what you love. But I find that to be a double-edged sword, because not always what you really, really love will help you make a living.
Yeah.
And then you're always trying to find a balance to strike between telling yourself, okay, was I in it for the right reasons, or am I in it because now I'm in it, I need to make a living, so I need
you
to do other
listen
things.
to a genre of music doesn't mean you necessarily will enjoy working in that space.
Absolutely, man.
It's a little less glamorous than it looks on the surface, for sure, and it's a lot of hard work. It's more difficult to sell the products that we sell. I would rather be selling flats. If I was just going to be making money, my agent ban jata. I would have become a broker or something, sold one flat a month and be happy. But it's not as easy as that. Our product is very, very difficult to sell. It requires a lot of thought.
Do you also feel that you need to come in and like I said, you need to think about the fact that, okay, I love consuming something. Just because you love consuming something doesn't mean that you will still love consuming it after you start doing this. At some point, you might turn around and say, maybe I don't want to consume this because I'm doing this in a day-to-day basis.
There are times when we both feel okay, we need to go and experience a show or
I have an ad blocker everywhere I can.
So, which has nothing to do with us, where we are not sitting there looking at, acha, iska production kitna rahega, kitna ticket bika rahega, man, that guy suffered a loss, iska kitna, just go and say hey man, that was great, great gigs blow minds, and just that desire to feel that experience is always there, and we try to push ourselves to go and feel that.
How's Control Alt Del been? Delete? I know delete. I said Del. Yeah,
no problem.
Control Alt Delete.
We've had worse.
Yeah.
So that's actually plays a big part in keeping our sanity.
If you could show a video of this, you will show 2 really cool T-shirts that both of you are wearing.
We didn't really plan it. We end up. I think we have the very similar kind of wardrobe, because most of our wardrobe is band T-shirts. So Control Alt Delete has been amazing, man. It's probably the reason why 4x4 exists. I mean, we met because of Control Alt Delete, and we hit it off there.
Yeah.
And we kind of met doing the purest thing we can do for the reason in the music scene. That's doing a completely crowdfunded, transparent, pay what you want gig, where everything is transparent. There are no bands, there is no ticketing fee, and it's complete freedom to sing, say anything that is, and everything is completely driven by art or music for music's sake, rather than brand value, ticketing value.
And that's the rest of the stuff you do, right? And this must I remember someone once told me this, that there are some things you do when you have a company, some stuff you do for passion purely. And everything else will be passion mixed with a lot of other things. But I'm guessing
passion mixed with Excel.
Control Alt Delete has a fair amount of Excel as well. Yeah, but Control Alt Delete is that we've literally it's the one thing that money can't buy. You can't buy Control Alt Delete. It's not for sale. And that's
there's
where
no
I think
value
the
to it.
purity of the concept sort of comes from there. Even if you want to give me money, I don't want it. So it becomes very easy to sort of get rid of all the
baggage
preconceived notions, baggage that comes with deliverables, yada, 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 and just like do a gig for what it is supposed to be. नहीं चाहिए किसी brand का पैसा. We'll do it. People will believe in it enough. They will fund it and we'll do it. That's in principle is just that. We try to add like more facets to it, but at the end of it, at its core, it's basically just a gig. We want to do a gig how we want it to be, and Control Alt Delete is that.
Yeah.
That's the definition.
And that at some level keeps your, I would say, the authenticity of what you guys look at in terms of the brand stuff you do also comes from the fact that you get to do this. So it cleanses you. Is that?
Yeah, it's cleansing. It's actually no. It doesn't give it. I don't think we do it for authenticity. I think we do it. It ends up cleansing, but we do it because everything else.
That's why you starts
becoming boring. But Control Alt Delete is never boring.
Yeah, I mean, I would say we were doing it for cleansing. If we were doing 4x4 longer, but Control Alt Delete exists or has been in function, existed as a concept far longer than 4x4 has. So that especially reminds us that what is at stake here and what how this experience that is unfettered by any other outer economic conditions can actually influence, move. People and push them to do what things. So it's like a real dipstick for us to see where the so-called underground actually is right now, and because it's that tempo is always shifting, and it's not constant.
And sanity, very important.
And I guess also at some level it keeps. It also then that's why the credibility comes from, right? At some point, and I think doing some of these things also then, and like you said, it started earlier than your company, but it's literally been in one way. It's almost a balancing factor of saying it's that's where the credibility comes. That you're the reasons why you're doing what you do is based on that, and I think that's a great point for me to even segue to the last part we do on the show. It's called Humans of Advertising. I know you guys aren't in advertising, but that doesn't matter.
We are sort of in advertising.
Everybody's in
Everybody's in advertising. Everyone's
events are marketing.
As long as you're selling something, then you're in advertising.
This is my not so rapid fire round. What can you whip up in an instant, Nikhil? You
chai.
You can have whip up in an instant. The censored ones. Yeah, that's uncensored. I can whip up a costing in an instant.
Excellent.
I actually can.
Excellent.
You can. Yeah.
What's the last book that you enjoyed? Do you guys read books?
Yeah, I do read.
He reads books. I don't.
What's the last book you enjoyed?
Last book that I actually enjoyed. I've been reading a lot of crap stuff lately. The Airport.
But Airport always makes you make bad choices in books. Most times.
like really, really bad choices. I think the last book was The Land of Seven Rivers by I forget the author's name. I know the book. It's basically a book about how the geography has how India's geography has influenced its essential ethnic composition. I think it's called The Land of Seven Rivers.
Do you guys listen to podcasts?
No.
Not really.
I've been trying to, but I have a very small attention span.
We couldn't hear our own podcast that we did for Atala. I've tried many times. It's an hour of listening. I can't.
So the way to do it, and that's what I find interesting, which is my thing for all non-podcasts, because I used to be one, is to literally turn around and say, just play it in the background initially, first couple of times when you're doing something else, and then slowly it becomes a habit, and then eventually you listen to it for fully. And that's
yeah, I think I can be a good podcast listener. I love radio. I mean, not for the music, but like for the other time pass that happens on it, which is essentially that. I like listening to people talk.
You guys should listen to Switched On Pop, which is a Vox podcast, which is primarily about music, but it's got multiple different, they talk about everything about how stuff is happening, but also then talk about the business side and all that. But it's not it's an interesting mix. So if I had to suggest one, I would suggest that one. Why do you think advertising will not die?
As long as you have something to sell, you'll have to advertise. And that cycle's never going to end, because there's always going to be people in the world who'll want other people to do the things that they like, enjoy, or derive benefit from. So that's why advertising is never going to die.
Yeah, it'll just evolve. It'll evolve into whatever is the need of the hour, but it can't die. Like you said, as long as you have something to sell, you have to get it out there.
While that is generally my last question, if you weren't doing what you're doing right now, what would you be doing?
I already answered that one. I would be selling flats.
Flats.
Like then I want all out catching, man. Like if I'm not,
I'd probably still be a marine engineer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or I don't know, maybe some dead end marketing job.
Thanks so much for doing this, guys. I know it's not late in the night. It's like normal person time, but
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's cool. 9:30 is cool.
for me it's still evening.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm the oldest person in this room right now because I'm like, oh, this is like
नहीं 11 साढ़े
I'm
11
just going to
बजे.
fade into one randomness before we.
Yeah,
well, I'm going to get brought
ages
into-
jokes. Ages jokes.
Okay,
Let's not go there.
So that's it for this episode of
Thank you so
Advertising is
much.
Dead.
Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Anupam Gupta, B50 on Twitter, and listen into the Equity Sahiya podcast brought to you by Motilal Oswal Asset Management Company. The Equity Sahiya podcast offers deep investment insights into the potential of many sectors in India which are growing and have a lot to offer for your portfolio. New episodes out every Tuesday on the IVM Podcast app or any other app where you get your podcasts from.
Filter coffee is a fascinating beverage. You need to pick the right beans, blend them in the right proportion, roast them to perfection, and slow brew at the right temperature to get the perfect cup. Which is exactly like great conversations as well. You need to track down the most interesting minds, get them into their zone, and settle down for an unhurried, unscripted chat. And coffee for me is always, always, always best enjoyed with friends. I'm Karthik Nagarajan, and do share my table as I meet some of the most interesting people I know and sit them down for a strong cup of coffee and an even stronger conversation. Join me every Wednesday for a freshly brewed episode. This is not frappe. This is the Filter Coffee Podcast.